I'm Damien Fowler.
And I'm Eileen Liffring.
And welcome to this edition of The Big Impression.
Today, we're joined by Sara Badler, the Chief Advertising Officer of The Guardian US. She's leading the charge behind The Guardian's first major US brand campaign called The Whole Picture, a bold effort to reintroduce one of the world's most trusted news organizations to American audiences.
It's an ambitious moment for The Guardian, with plans to expand coverage in New York and DC, launch new US podcasts and connect with readers in fresh ways. The campaign is signaling a big step forward for the brand and for quality journalism in the digital age.
From that striking yellow billboard in Midtown Manhattan to new approaches in digital marketing and audience engagement, The Guardian is proving that serious journalism can still make a splash and drive real impact.
So let's get into it.
The whole picture is really, it's The Guardian saying, which I think now is more important time than ever, is this idea that we are completely global perspective. We're independent and we have no paywall. Everyone can read us. And we are focused and dedicated to journalism. And the whole picture really shows dedicated in every sort of way of telling the facts, whether that is culturally, artistically, with the World Cup coming upon us. And obviously The Guardian is a massive, one of the biggest soccer decks in the world, if not the biggest, and really showing up in different ways the whole picture. And so I'm probably talking too much about this, but you see us on the subway. We did a live activation last week in the meatpacking district, and it's just really showing who we are and what we represent.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's one of those things, like the 11/11 thing. When you think about it and you notice it, once I saw the campaign launch, then I saw it on the New York subway, and it was everywhere. But I'd read that the editor of The Guardian, Catherine Viner, had said that this is the perfect time to reintroduce The Guardian to US audiences. And I know it's had great traction in the country for a while. Why is that? Why do you think it is the perfect time, to, especially in New York and, metropolitan cities? Why is it the right time?
I think now more than ever, we really want alternative news sources. And I say that meaning The Guardian's been around for 200 years. We are not new by any means, but we are new-ish and more of like a teenager here in the US. And we have tons of obviously news outlets, and a lot of them are owned and operated by billionaires. And, there's all different things that are happening to them. There's consolidation, there's putting up more paywalls. And I think now more than ever, having something free and a truly global perspective is unique and something that we have.
Yeah, and the campaign itself has such a striking centerpiece. The creative, looking at it, it's bright yellow. There's words that are, hidden. I'm curious if you can describe a little bit about that creative choice developed with Lucky Generals, and can you walk us through basically the idea behind that concept?
It was not easy. I would say that it took our marketing and, cross-organizational functions a long time to come up with this with Lucky Generals. To credit to them, they've been amazing, and they've worked with us in the UK and now in the US. We also work with PhD as an agency, which also has been amazing. And, it just took time of evolving of what our real story is and what we want people to get out of it. And I think the global perspective, free, independent journalism that's factual with integrity and talking about culture in these key moments is really what we wanted people to understand, know, and hear.
Yeah, looking at the media strategy a little bit, what was the plan for go-to-market and for reaching those target audiences?
So there's, and I think this is with every marketing campaign. I was actually on talking yesterday on a panel and saying there's no more my marketing campaign is like a media plan, right? You've got a podcast, you've got activations, you've got events. So I think one thing to really think about, or that we've thought about, is how do we consistently beat a drum and people recognize it throughout not just one moment, but multiple moments throughout their day, whether it's on the subway, through the activation and events. So that's something that we really focused on. And I think we're doing that and we're continuing to do that, which I'm very excited about. We've done a few things. We did a fashion collaboration with Lingua Franca, the sweaters that were really excited in the West Village. Going there after this, and we're having a party tomorrow evening there. And then other things like we are going to be kicking off a residency at the Ned, which is super exciting with our editors. And so I think keeping the drumbeat and showing up at these places is part of what we want to show. We truly are the whole picture.
Before we get to the sort of channels you use, I just wanted to sort of like ask you about that event planning around media campaigns. Why is that an important part and piece of a marketing strategy these days? The idea of the building community around events.
I think there's like a couple things to that. I think obviously we're still like coming out of COVID in the sense that people want to go out, people want events. I also think the cultural moments are just so important. And especially for brands like ourselves who like, for example, the soccer World Cup coming, which is every 4 years, like this is a huge moment for us. And so I think planning around that and the sense of community, I think is important in everything we do, right? We want to, even here at Advertising Week, there's a sense of community. We eat, live and breathe kind of the same sort of things in day in and day out. And so I feel like that's kind of something that we're trying to build. And I think that if you feel a part of it, it's just so mumuch stronger.
Speaking of the World Cup, can you say anything more about your plans there?
Yes. I mean, as I mentioned, we're, one of the largest global soccer desks. We have a Football Weekly podcast that has been in the UK forever. I actually went to their event a few weeks ago in London, and it was truly, when you talk about those cultural moments, it was one of those things that I've kind of like heard about it. My husband's British and a huge football fan and like listens to the podcast, but I never really understood the true fans. Like it was the strike on the tubes were happening, of course, while I was there. Just luckily, always. And then, of course, like it's pouring down rain on and off when you think it's going to be beautiful. And there's still fans from all over the world coming. And it's not just for one team, it's for every team and so it's just like that is kind of the cultural moment. And so seeing that, we're going to be launching that here in North America, which is super exciting.
It's interesting. In the UK, there's a very distinct sense of who reads The Guardian. I'm a Guardian reader, I admit, and I actually was a Guardian contributor as well for a few years. But in the US, do you have a strong sense of the Guardian readership? Is that galvanizing? Is that kind of coming together?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're, to your point of like, what was your media plan? And I'm sure we had a podcast with Vox that we did there, and I think that we're still trying to figure it out. I would say because we don't have a paywall, we really think, and I truly do believe that like everyone can be as a Guardian audience at one point. We do tend to have different SKUs of, older people that like have identified in the past with the Guardian, things like that. But we're also starting to create, I think, a buzz in younger generations, and being out here and being on the subways and having these activations and the World Cup and other things happening. We're launching other podcasts and newsletters and things like that. We're really starting to like grow audience across the board.
Are there any other channels that you're experimenting with?
I'm like everything. Like we're launching video, podcast, newsletters. I'm just thinking, I'm like events, like I mentioned, the Ned residency, which will kick off October 14th, I want to say. So we're kind of trying to do everything. I think that's like another thing as we evolve as publishers, is that's just something that's kind of happening. And we're really excited to be doing it.
And I guess maybe touching on the programmatic strategy on the side of things, how has that grown, as it were, since, you've taken this role?
Definitely. I'm sure we were in the press with the trade desk as we launched the trade desk, which was kind of ironic, obviously, because I think we were like the first, when I was at Dotdash Meredith, we were the first publisher there, and then coming to the Guardian, able to do it again. But is like, we have really looked at our programmatic strategy, and we actually kind of reorganized. And so the global programmatic strategy is actually coming out of the US, which is very unique for The Guardian, which obviously everything is headquarters in the UK. And I think it really actually ties to our brand campaign of the whole picture. And this global perspective is that we're really becoming one global unit. And I don't think it was like that before. I think it's been siphoned in different ways. And I think now this is kind of the time. And so tying that back to the programmatic strategy is we're doing that as well. So we have one global programmatic team and strategy that we're super excited about, and, you know, very good talent. And we're just really excited to lean in as much as we can.
Very cool. So I know the campaign is so new still, but what kind of reaction have you seen so far?
It's really been positive. Not that I was expecting any negative, but it's just been like a lot more vibrant than I even thought it would be. To your point, like the neon yellow and just like seeing the signs and on the subway and just like constantly seeing them. We also had billboards in different places, and like even the meatpacking district, the activation we did there, which thank God it didn't rain. But like it was, you know, you could take off like different of the wording, and we had different like social media people that were activating on it. It was just cool to see. And it's also cool to see like the street traffic that it gets. Also, one other funny thing is we did the lingua franca, we did the storefronts with the Guardian gear in it. And I took my daughters last week and I was like so excited. And one of the sweaters was sold out. And the salesperson was like, I was like, who was it? Like, was it I was like naming like colleagues. Like, I was like, was it Jane? Was it,
Yeah.
And they're like, no, someone came in and bought it. And I was like, yes. So I think like those are the kinds of things also that have just made it really fun.
From your perspective as a marketing chief, are there sort of KPIs that matter most for a campaign like this? You know, obviously sales, brand lift, engagement. How do you kind of look at it? And I know, again, to Eilise's point, it's kind of early days to say for this specific campaign, but in general, what are the KPIs that you kind of track on your dashboard?
We were just talking about this because we're like, how do you quantify? And obviously my like background and life of programmatic, I'm like, what, like, give me some data. And I think that it's hard for us to say exactly what it looks like, because I would say when you quantify it from like how many RFPs are we getting, or is like our revenue growing, or how we're seeing that, but it's really, we're actually now having meetings with proactive ideas of things that we offer that we couldn't offer before. So I think tracking kind of like our global footprint and working with clients in a way that's way more collaborative rather than, oh, you're getting this RFP and it's kind of like a circle of something that, you're checking a box because you're giving it to us because you saw this. I think from a consumer perspective, just like having presence in all of these places, and we know we're growing our audiences and we can see that. We do look at the data and research all the time on this, and like actually every like Thursday, like we're figuring out like what happened this week that kind of shows that we're still progressing. And I think the other thing that we have to remember about marketing that's been different is it can't just be a one and done thing. You have to talk about this, like it launched last week. Now it's ad week. What are we doing? What are we doing next week? And then what are we doing in 7 weeks that's going to keep this going?
Yeah. On that note, how are you kind of tying your normal like content strategy to marketing strategy? Is there a tie-in?
We collaborate all the time on things. I mean, like even with the sweater collaboration, we have our voices and our editors wearing these sweaters, and like they truly are the voices. I'm just like in the background trying to make sure brands are aware and audiences grow from it, but they're the voices of The Guardian. And, they are kind of, they lead with integrity and independence, and we have to look at that. So that's also very important and why it's so exciting for us.
Now, I know the Guardian has a unique kind of monetization because it has a trust. Yes. But I wondered if you could sort of break down a little bit the Guardian's stance, that's a complicated thing to say, on monetization, between the subscription and the ad supported and everything in between. Mm-hmm. How do you think about that, and how do you approach that?
Every day.
Yeah.
I think about it every day because it's very unique. I would say we are so lucky to be owned by the Scott Trust because we look at things and we do things like this to the whole picture. that are very like thought out, methodical, programmatic. They make sense. We're able to do that because we're owned by a trust. So we're able to say, we don't need to do or worry about something that's happening in Q2. We can think about what's happening in the World Cup or when, you know, the next one and what that looks like. So that's the trust. And that's what we're very lucky to have. From what you touched on with reader revenue is our readers really invest in us. And that's like kind of something that we can say, and we can say that to clients. We can say that to marketers, consumers, everyone. We can really, genuinely say people are investing in us because they want to read us and they want us to do well. And that's how we need to put our story out there. And that's how I think we overlap from an advertising and a reader revenue perspective is like, ultimately, we're just trying to grow these audiences and for people to hear our stories.
There's something nice about that, asking readers to contribute what they want. That model works to build loyalty, I expect. Yeah.
Completely. And that's something that I think it takes time. And that's why I'm saying I don't know our conversions for yesterday, but I do know that we are building somewhere that's exciting.
So you've had senior roles at Hearst, the New York Times, and Dotdash. What would you say are the biggest challenges even legacy publishers face when it comes to capturing readers today still?
We face all the challenges.
Many challenges.
Yeah, and I feel like it's pretty, I would say it's pretty consistent to your point of being at a lot of publishers that are, have been around for a long time and huge brands. And I think some of the things that we, the struggle is obviously one, there's a lot, right? There's so much media to consume. It's like, how do you make yourself unique and different and in that way? It's also like there's been a lot of different acquisitions and things that have happened. So it's kind of like, how do you make people aware of who your true brand is and where it sits? I think those are, it also is like the challenge of the times, right? Like meaning the actual time of happening where like when I was at Dotdash and we were living through COVID was a very different time than what we're doing now. I would not suggest live events at that point, but then, here we are and this is what we're doing. I would say at the New York Times, it was a place, it was right when, elections were happening when I was there as well. And so I think, it's really, everyone's got their challenges, but everyone also plays to their strengths. And I think that's what's really important for publishing.
Yeah. Are there any innovations, maybe particularly in digital advertising, that you see as giving you optimism for even funding quality journalism in the future?
This campaign has given me a lot of optimism. Like the whole picture has been amazing to see. And also because I think it makes so much sense, which is really nice because I think that I live in a world where everything's just completely overcomplicated and just what it means is independent, factual, and free. That's really, it just makes sense. And I think things like that show optimism in what's going on.
Yeah, we touched there on innovation, which means we have to ask you a little bit about AI.
Yes.
And that has been kind of framed in some ways as a threat, but also an ally. Where do you stand on that?
I think we're in the middle.
Yeah.
That's probably the most boring answer ever, but it's
it's good. It's fine.
It's not, we are actively using it and trying to figure out how and where it fits in different places. But it does not change how we report and our journalism.
Good. Good to hear. Good to hear. Now some quick fire questions for you.
Let's do it.
What do you think is one thing the ad market desperately needs but doesn't have?
Oh my God. We have so much of everything. The ad market desperately needs maybe some better organization of what our products are and the different types would be something.
Or streamlined.
Yeah, a streamlined approach, would be something.
Less fragmentation, perhaps? I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, put words in your mouth.
I think one thing that publishers need is really to work better together to figure out kind of what the future holds for them.
and you may have answered this already in the podcast, but a publisher you secretly admire for how they're playing the game?
I mean, I think the New York Times has been brilliant in, just how they've worked through a lot of different acquisitions they've made and things like that. Has been great to see. But I think all publishers have done a really great, the best that it's been a tough market. And I think that, even from a programmatic perspective and everything, we're just trying to do our best to get through it and also understand kind of what the world will look like quarter to quarter, which is very different. And it's not those days where you could be I remember in past lives, you'd be year over year, last year at this time, and you're well, last year at this time was such a good
point. Yeah.
Can't even compare anymore.
I know.
Yeah, so it's well, last year this happened, and then and so I think that's a tough thing for publishers to do.
What would you say is the boldest marketing risk you've ever taken?
That's a great question. I would say just because I'm just to go back to also the whole picture, I think this whole thing we've done, also the collaboration with Lingua Franca and the sweaters, we didn't know how people would react or the world would react or if they would react. But I think that it's something, because it's something you're just putting out there. We've never done anything in the fashion world at all. And I think that was kind of something that probably not the most scary, but the most scary to me this week of doing that. I was I don't know if this is going to work and we don't know how people react. And, you want only positive things to come out, especially if you're doing such a big collaboration.
Nice. Marketing every week is different, isn't it?
Yeah. Just depends on the day.
Yeah.
I guess here's the last question. If you could steal one idea from another industry and bring it into publishing, what would that be? Sorry, these are hard questions.
No, I know. Well, it's funny. I was thinking, Fashion Week, because we just talked about fashion, but now we're in advertising week. So they've definitely done that. I would say, I don't know. I guess we don't have a Super Bowl or anything like that. That would be good. I think we've got enough stuff. Really,
we should stop.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's South by, there's Cannes, we do so many things, and I think that's one thing from my perspective that again with the whole picture that we're really trying to do is show up in the right way where it matters. And if you try to be everywhere, you're nowhere. And I think that's really important for us to think about. And so trying to do something that you haven't done yet, you should definitely do, but it should feel natural.
Sarah, we're recording at Advertising Week, and I'm curious if you have a major takeaway that you could share with us.
Okay, so I mentioned day 2. We're on day 2, and I think it does feel bigger than it's ever been or busier, for sure, and it feels like there's so many things going on. The other thing, though, is I think because there are so many of these things that it also feels like in this world right now we're doing a lot of in-house things, if that makes sense. We have tons of our team in town this week. I know that when I talk to clients or agencies, they're doing a lot of internal stuff. So it feels like that's a big, something that's changed a little bit.
I would say there's definitely a lot more people, I think, this week than I remember in years past, at least.
But even every time I talk to someone, they're like, well, we have a lot of internal stuff going on. And I think that that's there's a lot going on. So I think that that's also something that is happening that didn't happen as often.
And that's it for this edition of The Big Impression.
This show is produced by Molten Heart. Our theme is by Love and Caliber, and our associate producer is Sydney Cairns.
And remember,
we have tons of obviously news outlets, and a lot of them are owned and operated by billionaires, and there's all different things that are happening to them. There's consolidation, there's putting up more paywalls, and I think now more than ever, having something free and a truly global perspective is unique and something that we have.
I'm Damien.
And I'm Elise.
And we'll see you next time.